Our guest this episode is Jonny Holsten, CEO of BridgeSelling. Jonny helps sales teams qualify faster and close more deals by giving them a practical framework that builds confidence and consistency. Instead of pushing with pressure, he shows reps how to create clarity because clarity engages. When buyers feel guided through the conversation, they stay present, open, and ready to move forward. So here to share how structure turns sales calls into real engagement, please welcome to the podcast, Jonny Holsten. Welcome, Jonny.
Welcome to the Engaging Personalities Podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Hey, thanks for having me. This will be a fun chat, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's we love talking to salespeople, and you know, there's always a new angle or a different way of looking at things, and everyone kind of finds, you know, the one that speaks to them, right? You know, that sort of thing. And so, before we get into bridge selling and what you have there, Jonny, tell us what is your history? How did you get to this point? Because a lot of salespeople don't really set out to be salespeople, in my experience. What was your story?
Yeah, well, my story is pretty much exactly the same. My if we go way back without making the story too long, I always say my first introduction to sales was when I was like 11 years old. I was 10 or 11, scouring the neighborhood with my dad looking for lawns to mow. And he would just help me find a lawn that was super long, tall grass, and he'd say, go knock on that door. And so starting from then on, I've always been in sales. I've always sold for myself. I've always sold for the business that I run and work in, and it kind of turned into a lifelong thing. But I didn't really recognize that I was in sales or really good at sales until I had been in it for a while. And my earliest introduction to working with sales teams was I would work with marketing teams actually and help them figure out what is our messaging for buyers? How are we creating a customer-centric message? And over time, I would get asked again and again, hey, can you come back and work with our sales team? And I would go work with the marketing team and then be asked to come in and work with the sales team. And using some of the parallels between what I had done with marketing and then selling, really it became a customer journey on my end, or an evolution of how do we create a one-to-many message that resonates with our customers from a marketing standpoint? But then how do we take that and turn it into a one-to-one sales message that's even more customer-centric than our marketing message? And so after that really took root and had done that for a while, really began to realize, okay, I think I should focus and double down on this sales thing. And I had the same misconceptions about sales as most people do or have had at some points in their life. And I think that's why it took me a while to really admit that I was in sales and I was good at sales, and that's a good thing. And that was my journey. But yeah, that's been the last several years that led me here to BridgeSelling and what we do now.
So Jonny, tell me a little bit about those misconceptions, just so that, you know, because my mind automatically goes to many things, but
Of course, yeah.
One specifically for you, and how did you reconcile that to kind of come to a place where, yeah, you liked it, or you knew it was the place for you?
Yeah, well, I think a thought leader that I always listen to is Scott Galloway. I don't know if you are very familiar with him, but he's got all sorts of great takes. He's all sorts
Dr.
of opinions,
G.
and he always, yep, Prof G, and he always just says asking strangers for money is embarrassing, and that's what sales is. It can be at a core, and I think at points I had felt that where maybe I was selling to the wrong person, or I didn't have conviction in what I was selling. And that had created a level of stress or anxiety or embarrassment in that process, which I think is real for a lot of people. They've been asked to sell something they don't want to sell, or they've been asked to sell to someone maybe that isn't a great fit for their product. And I think every salesperson naturally ends up in those situations at times. But where I really experienced the pivot was when you're in sales, your job is to be a professional conversationalist. And if you are there to have a great conversation and help someone solve a problem, then you're going to be just fine. And there's no embarrassment. In fact, there's pride and there's a sense of achievement and accomplishment knowing that you've helped somebody. And so I think most of those misconceptions come because we've either been sold something by someone we didn't want to be sold by, think the door-to-door salesman at the worst possible time, right? Or we've been asked to do that, and we've been asked to be on the other side of that. And that's where you get all these misconceptions. So in my line of work and in my work with companies and thinking of all the highest success stories I've had when it comes to sales, is it's because someone is selling a great product to someone who really needs it. And when you get those two things aligned, most of the misconceptions about sales tend to just disappear because it feels so much better.
Yeah. And that reframing of selling is serving, or you're helping people, you're just
Yeah,
trying to help. Like, how can you be
that's
faulted
it.
for trying to help someone, right? Like, yeah, I think that's an important insight, or way of looking at things in that, because it just positions you in a way that you're not feeling slimy, you're not feeling,
Yep.
and I think the other thing you talked about too before was that, like, having a great product or something that you can really get behind. you know uh, I've, for many many years, being an entrepreneur, selling my own services, and then people on my team services, you're sometimes connected to it so much that the other
Hmm.
side of it is, it becomes a little bit personal. The rejection's more personal because it's coming at you,
Yes.
but you do get the founder's passion behind it, right? That you can kind of wave the flag from the rooftops because you are excited about that. And sometimes people, yeah, are at companies that just don't have that same level of excitement for what they're doing. So um, good reframes on that. So you said that salespeople are conversationalists. Now, not everybody is a good conversationalist. So, what do you do to help people, that maybe find themselves in sales and they're struggling, they're having trouble? How do you take those people and be able to help them?
Hmm. I think the biggest thing is when you hear about a typical salesperson, or maybe someone who thinks they're not wired for sales, is because they're thinking of shooting the crap or building rapport or doing things with people that are all about like buddy buddy, being friendly, and uh, small talk is where a lot of people go with the conversationalist idea. When I find that the biggest reason people succeed in a great conversation is because they have a plan going in, and they know what that conversation is going to be about, and they know the goals of that conversation. And when people feel like they aren't great at conversation or they're not great at selling, it's often because they just don't know what to do. They've never built a sound strategy or a good game plan. And so then when you get in the moment where a conversation isn't going how you'd like it to go, you recoil, you freak out, you end it as soon as possible. And then most people are left with the takeaway of, I'm not a great salesperson, or I wasn't made for sales, or that's not just who I am. And I find the best way to help someone who's in that position is really just by giving a solid game plan and saying, when you go into a conversation with a prospect, what are the 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you want to cover, and what are your transitional statements, and how are you getting in and out of those topics? It's not really about scripting to death and having a pitch down. It's just, what do you want to talk about, and how do you get to that point in the conversation? And when you solve for those two things, I've seen people who are very, very rough in sales conversations all of a sudden become strategic advisors and really great guides in a sales chat, just because you take some time to map those things out ahead of time.
Yeah. So I think you say something about structure beats talent, something along those lines, right? Like this idea that we can, if you give, is,
Yeah.
is that now? I'm just kind of, you know guessing, is that part of the bridge selling, the structure there? Is that
That's
part?
certainly,
Is
yeah,
that's kind of a good metaphor there, anyways.
it is. Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
us
Well,
tell
we
us
think
what is that structure like? What does it look like?
absolutely. Structure and simplicity will make someone who's not a rock star way, way closer to being a rock star. And when you get into sales strategy or methodology, it's very tempting to make something super complex. And, oh, well, we need to make this hyper unique to whatever you're selling or whatever you're doing. And you either have an overly complex system, or you have an overly generic system, which is the example of maybe a sales leader or a sales coach coming in and saying, let's build rapport. I'll go back to that same example. Okay, well, what does that mean? And then what does that mean for your sales process? So if you can provide a good structure and the parameters around what's a sales conversation, what are we here to talk about, what are we here to achieve, You then take someone who might have some of the soft skills deficits and give them a game plan, and all of a sudden they're twice as good as they were before, because you see two things. You have someone who's overly quote unquote talented, but they lack the structure to actually capitalize on that talent, or someone has nowhere near the talent of someone else and the structure helps elevate them, and you'll find a meeting in the middle of both of those situations. So the bridge, like that you referred to, is the analogy we use at BridgeSelling, which is a common analogy, but it's closing a sale is like crossing a bridge, and there's left to right. We're moving our customer from one side to the next. And our approach is across that bridge, there's really 6 different things that you need clarity on and structure around in your conversation to move a deal forward. And so we help companies figure out, it's the same 6 principles for any sale, but figuring out uniquely to that company, how does that principle apply to you? That way you can take that structure. The bridge is just a structure for a conversation. Now you base your coaching and your strategy around that. And so your team members are really able to overcome either a lack of talent or a maybe too much talent with the right structure to see proper execution. So yeah, there's a little bit about the bridge and the structure concept, but we go structure and simplicity over talent and complexity every day.
Which is something you can provide, right? Like the talent is going to vary wildly from organization to organization, right? So how do you kind of
That's right.
even the odds a little bit? So this is great what you do. So you mentioned something about coaching, and I didn't know if that was, within the sales organization, but what does that look like when you work with a company? You come in, you teach the structure to the salespeople, the sales management, give them tools to run it. What does that kind of
Yeah.
look like?
Yeah, it can look like all of the above. The cool thing about the bridge analogy that I just spoke about, which relates to coaching, is we also have a scoring formula. So every company's bridge that we'll develop, it turns into a scoring formula that we call your bridge score. And out of that bridge score, you'll get an objective number out of 100 for how well that conversation went. And how this relates to coaching is if you close your eyes and picture, a bridge or a spreadsheet or a chart with 6 columns, what each of those columns, it's either going to be red, yellow, or green, meaning you skipped a step, made partial credit, or succeeded. And when you give a sales leader and a sales rep a full chart of every conversation going on in their organization scored that way, you now can work with a sales leader and teach them the methodologies, help them learn the framework, and they can take it and score their conversations in their department a lot easier. And now they can sit down with a rep, and they're not having a coaching conversation that's based on one-offs or more general principles. They're actually able to have a conversation that's based on what this rep has done multiple times. So you have your hands on the lever that's going to make a real change. It's not just a theory or an idea.
Got you. So it's almost like you're aggregating those scores in the different parts of the bridge over time. So we're really seeing a pattern, a trend evolving. So we're really coaching for, what is that critical, success factor for
That's
that
it.
individual. Yeah. So
That's it.
tell me, Jonny, because I think people are listening. They're like, these 6 things. Can you share? I don't know. Maybe this is too proprietary,
Sure.
but what can you share
Not at
those
all.
6 things, just so that we kind of get a better sense of what that bridge looks like?
Yeah. Well, definitely not too proprietary. There's nothing under the sun. And I'm about to release a book about this. So it will be the
Congrats.
full, yeah, thank you. The more detailed version will be out soon, but I'm happy to share as much as possible today. The 6 steps are, you've got to do 6 things to close a sale. You've got to pinpoint the pain. So you need to understand the real pain, the real problem you're solving of your buyer. You've got to qualify that person, make sure that they're the right buyer and they're qualified and that they, can afford your solution. Third step, and be picturing left to right on the bridge here. Third step is solution and success. You've got to tie your solution to the pain you uncover first and talk about this long-term, short-term, immediate success of that solution. That's the first half of the bridge. The second half of the bridge is Q&A. Step 4 is questions and answers. So open the floor for that discussion, the learning, the conversation around the buying process and your product. Step 5 is 3 next steps. So you want to end every conversation with 3 next steps. Step 6 is closing. And we're not about the hard sell, but the cliche of always be closing. We say you either are going to close the deal or you're going to close the next call. And that should be your strategy going into that. And so these 6 things, they really are foundational sales principles. But when you, for example, we would take all those things and we'd add a custom definition for each company. So for one company, we've learned, hey, your reps aren't doing a great job at all about tying your solution to the success. So we might retitle that and do some training around elevating a team to do that. And when you focus on those things, you start to score conversations with that model I talked about earlier, which is super simple. It's really, did your rep achieve that step? Did they try and fail, or did they succeed? When you get enough data, and one thing we do in our work is we'll do reports on how well a team is doing across these steps. And we'll find all the time, what recent report scored 104 sales calls. Only 19% of them were ending with next steps and scheduling that next conversation. So you find crazy leakage in that just by thinking through it through those foundational terms and actually scoring it. That's the big lever that we try to help pull. So
like it all comes down to that data, right? Like to what are those issues? And I mean, I'm going to broadly generalize, but I don't think people really like being analyzed and like poked and prodded and, like and scoring and seeing gaps. It's like, it's painful. And yet that feedback is so valuable because that's what you're going to learn off of. And so, you might, I'm going to guess there might be a little bit of resistance on the front end, but once you start rolling with this, I think people probably enjoy the process. Or what does that look like when companies, bring you in?
It really depends on the mindset of the leaders. So it's really important to us that from the top down, it's a matter of everyone's on board with the bridge. There's many ways you could change your sales process and apply a methodology, but for us, it's super important that you're committed to what we're doing. And with that, there is resistance on the rep level at times because it may be a rep could be killing it, but their conversations are all over the board. So you have that conversation of, well, I'm hitting quota, I'm doing really well. Why should I change what I'm doing? Which is a fair argument, right? If you're in that rep's shoes. And it kind of comes down to the idea that it almost isn't about it almost isn't about the financial side. Of course, when you start implementing the bridge, the sales will grow for sure, but it's a matter of, are you treating your conversations with a super high level of excellence? And do you care about the level of excellence you're carrying into your conversations? And we find it's actually, sure, there's resistance, but it's always often a really good fit once people have that paradigm shift. And if your sales team is open to learning, open to being better, and you're giving them the resources to do that, as long as it's communicated and presented in the right way, which usually means we're having a leader in the organization do most of the rollout for us, that makes all the difference in the world. So, I would say not a ton of resistance if done the right way, but just questions and just ideas and people wanting to understand it better. And once they understand that, as much as it is a tool with those reports, that a lot of that's geared towards leadership, and it can feel like a real punch in the gut. But then you now have a game plan for what are we going to do going down to the front lines and level everybody up.
Yeah, I mean, when you explain the 6 parts of the bridge there, Jonny, I mean, I don't think there's a salesperson, alive who's going to go, yeah, no, that's not important, right? Like that's all going to be part of the conversation. And if any one of those is missing, you're going to fall through a hole in the bridge and you're not going to get them to the close. So
nailed it.
I think it's pretty safe to say that would be helpful to get good at those 6 areas. When people are scoring this, I'm guessing now we can pull recordings or transcripts and use AI to do this. Are you able to kind of score conversations very quickly, or how does that, like the data management of your sales force, what does that look like?
For us, we have a tool internally, so we can score calls for a client. We'll build them their custom bridge. We'll run calls through our scoring tech, and that's what we use to generate our reports. We're also working on doing more of a customer-facing sales rep tool that is built around that bridge and the data that a rep would use. But something that makes us, I would say, a little bit different in this big tech world that we live in now is, at least for our initial audit, we know that sales leaders they admit to listening to less than 1% of the calls in their department. Just the time doesn't allow to sit down and listen. So we'll actually do that for you. We call it our baseline bridge score audit, which is, let's see where you are now before doing anything else. And we'll actually listen with our own ears to a whole bunch of calls. Then we'll take that and use it to build out the tech, create the auto scoring, make it way more scalable. But on the foundational level, we feel like it's super important to, even if a sales leader has to hole up in a closet for a week and just listen to calls, it's so helpful to do that. You learn crazy things from it, but eventually that's not sustainable. So yeah, whether you're dragging and dropping into a custom GPT or doing something like that to scale it up, that's helpful. But for us, we do have a tool that we do it way quicker than we were at the beginning.
Which I'm sure is a valued service, just because, like you said, that like holding up and trying to listen to this stuff, like, that could be painful too, right? Like, oh, I can't, like,
yes,
relive
it
these
is
moments that are maybe like not the best, right? So,
and if
it's nice to insulate,
if you put yourself in that position, you'll scream like a fan watching a football game or a basketball game, listening to a call saying, what is happening here?
Well, and you say that about yourself if you listen back to a call. You're like, what was I thinking? Like, it's just, but that's just, again, the power of feedback, right? And just kind of, slapping the hand when you're doing something wrong and giving them a pat on the back when they're doing something right, so.
You have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you do that as a sales leader and and it's just closing point on this, if you can do that, and let's say you've got 5 reps on your team and you're able to listen to 10, it's heavy work, but 10 calls from each, and those first conversations of each rep. And you might find salesperson A has an amazing transitional phrase to get from one step of your bridge to the next, and the rest of your sales team does not. And they're all floundering. You'll listen to those 4 people, and of course you'll be like, what are you doing? But then you can come out of that audit, and it's not about, hey, you guys messed up. It's, hey, we discovered something really helpful that salesperson A is doing. And what we would love to do is now do a group session on how to use that sentence. Hey, salesperson A, walk us through how you do that. And that directly ties to navigating the bridge and executing a call. So it allows you to standardize some things that you would probably never otherwise have the ability to. And it's so helpful. And once you come up with those 5 or 6 things that relate to each stage of your call, you're really in a position to now replicate your best call over and over again, because what's happening on the line.
Well, and it's a conglomeration of all of the best calls, right? Like if you said you're stealing a piece from someone, and none of us is as smart as all of us, right? We get all the heads in the game who's successful in these different areas. Like you're making this perfect combination. I think that's really smart. Yeah, and you're just using that example with 5 reps, right? Like, but what the bigger your sales force, the more diversity, the more the input there will be, in finding that interesting. So that's cool. So when we talk about sales forces, what's the right size? What's the right fit for you? Like if there was a company listening right now and they said, oh, I like this. Like there is a beauty in the simplicity here. I got to admit, it's just kind of like straightforward structure, click, make the 6 things happen, and good things will happen to your sales. What kind of companies work with BridgeSelling?
Well, in best case scenario, we large enough to have an internal leader who really can carry our methodology forward, can be the change maker inside the company, and we can offer workshops or advising and strategy to help that person see a lot of success with our framework, but big enough to where you've got someone who can be boots on the ground, doing some coaching, doing some implementation, doing some rollout. And that's best. So that's different for everybody, but generally 5 reps or more. You've got a dedicated sales leader who's not necessarily on the phones, but is in charge of helping. And I say phones relative to whatever that means for your company, but they're the ones helping the team succeed. And from that size up is a good fit, but we've worked with companies that are going from that size to up to 75 or 80 reps, and they're using the bridge as a new hire training, or they're using the bridge to just refine their strategy, or they're using the bridge to score their existing Sandler script that's working really well. They just want some different scoring to it. So it's anyone who has enough of a team to have a dedicated leader, and that's sort of the entry point there. We have a quarterly workshop that we do. It's a virtual workshop that's lower cost. That's better for smaller businesses who are maybe trying to put some of these things in place now, earlier on, before they hit that stage. And that's always an option. But yeah, there's a little bit of context there.
Well, it's interesting, your model, because like you said, bolting onto a Sandler script or something like that, you have other sales methodologies maybe already in place, and they are leery about ripping and replacing, right? Just
Yep.
there seems to be a little bit of you know, working together, like because it is so fundamental, you can coexist in the same sales organization and have these things. Do you find that's common, or do you find that companies are kind of maybe just going alone with bridge selling as their kind of model of choice?
We've had both. I mean, I think being a creator of the framework, of course, I have a desire to see it be, a big thing and the thing. And I think my philosophy is I just would love a day where a company could even put on their website, meet with our sales team. We use bridge selling. And even the consumer would be so excited to talk to a sales rep because they know what's on the other side of that is going to be helpful. It's going to be honest. It's going to be filled with integrity. It's going to be based on helping you win. It's not going to be based on selling you something you don't need. But we work great with everything else you just mentioned. So the main thing is, if you've got a Sandler script that's crushing it, or you're using Medic, or you're using Challenger Sale, and what bridge selling does is it really just allows you to put different parameters and a different structure to what you're using in a way that's really easy to teach and learn and understand. So if you have a specific language or scripting from an existing methodology, and it works, but maybe the way you're currently teaching or rolling it out needs a little bit of a refresher, it's a great opportunity to mesh it with bridge selling. And example comes to mind of a company they needed to rapidly scale. They had a solid script in place, but they didn't really have that put in a training format to where they could rapidly scale. And so we listened to all their greatest hits on the phones. We absorbed their current content. We just put it in bridge language and used that to build a training. And it really was nothing different. It was just a new visual, a new scoring model, and it really was a great igniter for them. So it absolutely is, I would say, framework agnostic. As long as you're going about things with the same values as our philosophy, it can work really well that way.
Yeah. So when you talked about the scoring just now, it made me think about, score as a team overall, like, so it's not just a score per individual, which, yes, you got to work on those individual skills in the different parts of the bridge, but do you look at a team score, and is there some sort of correlation between and it could be individual or team score, but like whether it's quota attainment or they sell, or they have a higher closing percentage? I'm just wondering if there's any sort of correlations of data that you can kind of put to it.
There is a couple forms. The first, as far as the team goes, is we'll do full team data in the quarterly audits, which is the big picture across the whole team. But what we found is reps who adopt the framework and who score over a certain point on the bridge. So we score out of 100. So scoring over 80 out of 100, close rates jump 20 to 50%. And so that's the ultimate reason where, and I need to lead with that a little bit earlier, and because it's such a helpful thing to know about the bridge score, right? But that's sort of that's the big picture, where we focus mostly on the lead measure, which is how do we score this conversation, knowing that the same metrics that companies are already tracking, close rate, timeline on deal size, all of those things only get better the more focused you are on that initial metric, which is what we call your bridge score. And that's the philosophy behind it. So we find most companies have those other metrics in place. It's just a matter of plugging and playing our process early enough to really elevate whatever else they're tracking. And it could be a little bit different for everybody.
That's interesting, because the three big wins: win bigger, win faster, and win more of the time, are those KPIs that sales organizations are going to look at. but how
Yeah.
do you drive those and the bridge scores in behind that? So it's kind of nice to see what is responsible for what, right? You know, and what's going to move that eventual needle that you want moved, you know? So
Right. Yeah. And that's where you start with every client. Hey, what do you want?
yeah.
Close rates at
Yeah.
5. You want it at 15? How can we help you get there? So
Yeah.
yeah. Nailed it
Well,
there.
hey, what a great time to say, how can we get you there? How can people reach out to you, Jonny?
Oh yeah. Well, thanks for asking. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn way more than I should be. Jonny Holsten, Johnny with no H. And BridgeSelling.com. BridgeSelling is where you can sign up for our workshops. If you'd like to talk with me or my team, you can book a call directly there, and then always reach out on LinkedIn if you want to chat with me. So that's the best way to get involved. And we do we have a few different things that are always going. Quarterly workshops, that's a little bit more of a done with you, build your bridge workshop, and that's a great experience. We have one in November. But every month we do free trainings for sales leaders where we teach them how to use the bridge score, how to create their scoring formula, and how they might want to customize it to their company. That's every month. So if you just follow us on LinkedIn or hit our website, you'll see opportunities to sign up for all those. And yeah, we'd love to see anybody there.
Awesome. That's great. Hey, Jonny, this has been awesome. Thank you very much for coming on and sharing with us your model and just simplifying things. And I think it's just, we live in a complex world, and it's just kind of nice to see things just clearly laid out that are easy to follow. And I think what you brought here today is a big help to people who are trying to sell more.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Anders. I appreciate it. It was good to chat with you, and we probably could fill another hour with this, and we'll have to do it another time.
Another time, perhaps. Yes.
This is great.
Thanks, Jonny. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in once again. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged.
Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement and you're an industry leader or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engagify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and stay engaged.